Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Sharing Smarter, Mitigating Microsoft 365 Oversharing Risks, featuring Syskit's technical evangelist and Microsoft MVP, Vlad Catrinescu. My name is Patrick, and I am sales manager here at Syskit. Here with me is Vlad, our star of the day, and Philip, who will be showing you a demo of Syskit Point later on. Many of you already know Syskit as a company, but for those who don't, let me briefly introduce you. Syskit is a software development company founded more than 14 years ago. We develop products for Microsoft 365 governance and security, as well as for SharePoint on-prem administration. We currently have more than 3,500 customers around the world, ranging from small businesses to large corporations. We have 4 products, including our award-winning SP.Doc Kit for SharePoint on-prem, as well as our flagship product, Syskit Point for Microsoft 365 governance. Before we start, just a few housekeeping items. All registrants will receive a recording of the webinar within a few days. After the presentation, we will have a short demo of Syskit Point showing how it can help you gain deep visibility over your Microsoft 365 environment and enforce continuous governance processes. After that, we will have a Q&A session where Vlad will answer any questions you may have. Please use the Q&A function on the right side of the screen to ask your questions throughout the webinar. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter. Vlad is an Office 365 consultant helping organizations get the most out of their Microsoft 365 digital workplace. He focuses on helping administrators deploy, manage, automate, and configure governance across services such as SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, and Microsoft Teams. As an author, Microsoft certified trainer, and recognized international speaker, Vlad has helped over 1 million IT professionals and end users across the globe to better understand and get the most out of Office 365 and the greater Microsoft 365 platform. He's the author of 3 SharePoint books and over 70 courses of Pluralsight covering SharePoint, Microsoft 365, and the Power Platform. And finally, we are very excited to have recently announced that Vlad has joined the Syskit team as Syskit Technical Evangelist. So we are looking forward to work closely with Vlad. I will now turn things over to Vlad. Vlad, are you ready?
Yes, thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you very much for the warm welcome. It's great that this is actually my first, not my first webinar with Syskit, of course, but my first webinar as an official part of the Syskit team. So this is exciting, but also the pressure is super high, right? Okay, before I start talking, because as you probably know by now, I get excited and I don't stop talking. You can see my screen properly, right?
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome, perfect. Well, let's get started. First of all, thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time to join me today on this webinar about Microsoft 365 oversharing. So what is the plan for today? I have so many things I want to show you. I will go a bit fast, but what the plan is for today is, first of all, cover what is oversharing. Why do we even care about it? Then we will talk about external sharing. So how do we control external sharing in Microsoft 365? Because a lot of admins, the first thing when they think at oversharing, the first thing that comes to mind is external sharing. And then after that, we'll talk about some more advanced settings that also cover internal sharing. As Patrick mentioned, this webinar will be recorded. So if ever you need to drop or anything like that, of course, we will miss you, but don't worry, you'll have access to the recording afterwards. And then please ask questions. I don't want to do a monologue for the next 45 minutes. So Patrick and the amazing Syskit team behind, if there's any questions that make sense, don't hesitate to interrupt me, but we won't leave until we answer all the questions that you have. I always book myself 30 minutes after the webinar for Q&A because, again, I know that I get too excited and I talk too much. So any questions about what you see, please do not hesitate. Let's start with what is oversharing. And as I was building this, I went to ask my good friend Microsoft Copilot. I did some Google searches. So when you search oversharing only on either AI or on your favorite search engine, a lot of the results we'll see about oversharing in real life. So something that I learned about working with Copilot in the past month or so is you have to be specific. So let's move over to what is oversharing in Microsoft 365, which is the topic of today. Something that has changed a lot in the past few years, especially as Microsoft moved almost everyone now to the cloud, is that it's easy to share in Microsoft 365. You click on a document, on a folder, you click the share button, and if your settings are not well configured by default, you can share, create a link for anonymous share, for the whole company share, and it's just so easy now to just share content in Microsoft 365, and it applies with both internal and external users. Sometimes we just create links that are accessible forever. So I can go on a document, I can create a link that is open to everybody inside of the company, and then send that link in an email. Does that share the file with everybody in the company directly? No, but it creates this link, this key that gives access to people whenever they want. It's kind of like handing out keys to your home to a bunch of people, and you don't know when somebody will use it, because that link in a way is a way for people to access that document whenever they want while that link is valid. And using out-of-the-box tools is not necessarily easy to discover who has access to what, because every time you share a document, every time you share a folder, it can create broken permissions in SharePoint. Now, of course, we have different risks depending on who we share with. A lot of administrators are really focused on external users. So, and of course, that can bring a ton of risk, because what happens if somebody shares documents externally with maybe a competitor? What happens if I share documents, sites, folders with an external accountant, and then we forget about it? A few months later, that consultant ends up working with one of our competitors, and that consultant still has access to our files. So how do we manage that? That external users only have access to the things they need inside of our tenant, and at the same time, as soon as they don't need access anymore, they stop having access. But what a lot of people fail to talk about is internal risk. Internal risk has become more of a bigger issue in recent years, and we've seen it a lot more, unfortunately, especially in the tech place. In the past few years, there has been a lot of, in the past 2 years especially, a lot of layoffs in the tech industry, and a lot of companies used to have this open to everybody culture and everything, but I've seen it when Microsoft unfortunately did a few layoffs at Activision Blizzard just a few weeks ago, that a lot of people that were laid off had access to way too many things they shouldn't have, and they put all of that on Twitter as an example. So that can be an internal risk as well. How do we make sure that our internal users do not have access to more than they should? And also, limiting access of our internal users is also good for implementing zero trust inside our organization, because what happens if somebody in our company gets hacked? And we never want it to happen. We do everything for it to not happen. But what happens if somebody in our organization gets hacked? Well, if they only have access to the minimum things they need to do their job, we know what is the scope of things that might have been compromised. But if that internal user has access to everything inside the tenant, well, that scope has now become everything inside the tenant. And now our liability has now become everything inside the tenant. So those were risks that were always there. But now we also have this thing called AI that gained popularity in the past year, and especially with Microsoft 365 Copilot. Uh, to give you an example, because it's always fun to see it more in action, uh, I went inside one of my demo tenants and I had some stuff overshared on purpose. And then I had Vlad Catrinescu log in, simply ask Microsoft 365 chat, are there any recent documents that talk about media communications? Again, nothing to do, it's very generic document. I'm new at a company. I want to ask about, do we have any documents about media communications, things like that? What is the answer from Copilot chat? Yes, there are some recent documents that talk about media communication. For example, there's a document titled Layoff Project Plan for 2024, authored by John Smith. What if I was not supposed to have access to that file? Oversharing can create those kind of risks. And now everything you do is amplified by AI once you get Copilot. If your permissions are not right, people can simply ask Copilot normal questions. Copilot, of course, very secure, will only have access to the things that the user has access. But if your permissions are not good, Copilot, and that user has access to it, Copilot will make it easier for that user to have access, even if that user doesn't even know they're searching for a layoff plan. If my permissions are not right, well, it was easy for me to find it, even by accident. So it's really important that when we talk about oversharing, we talk about both internal and external risks, especially as most enterprises are now getting ready for Copilot. Okay, so let's talk a bit about external sharing to start with. What can we do to secure oversharing from an external point of view? First thing I want to mention is that when we talk about external sharing, we have quite a few places where we need to configure it, because there are quite a few places where people can collaborate externally in Microsoft 365. Of course, we have OneDrive for Business where, hey, I have a quick document, I need to share with somebody. It's not ready to go in SharePoint yet, so I can simply share it from there. I have Microsoft Teams as well, where we can invite users either as guests, or we can have shared channels. And of course, SharePoint, which of course I come from a SharePoint background, so it will always be my favorite in my heart. But we can share sites, we can share folders, document libraries, and so on. We also have the concept of a Microsoft 365 group, where depending on what we want to share, we can simply create a Microsoft 365 group. It has a SharePoint or multiple SharePoint sites attached to it, depending on how many channels you have in Teams. You have the Teams team, you have Planner, you have the shared mailbox. Well, you could add a guest directly to that Microsoft 365 group and simply give them access to everything at once. Or again, we can have dedicated SharePoint sites where, whether it's a modern team site not attached to a Microsoft 365 group, or communication site. And I hope none of you still has classic sites, but if you do, those can also have their own sharing settings. So what makes it a bit tougher for us as admins is that we need to configure external sharing settings in 3 different places. And if you're a small company, that's pretty easy, because you might only have one person that does all of it. But if you're a big company, you might have different people that manage SharePoint, from people that manage Entra ID, from people that manage Microsoft Teams. So you might need to work together to get all of those done. So I'm trying not to do too many slides today. I know for some of you in Europe, it's almost 5 o'clock and you don't want to go to sleep with PowerPoint. And for those of you on the West Coast, it's 8 a.m. So again, don't want to bore you with PowerPoint. So let's start with SharePoint. I kind of told you a bit, SharePoint is the favorite in my heart. So we'll start with SharePoint. With SharePoint, we can either control settings at the tenant level, but we can also control settings at the site collection level. And I know we're only supposed to use the word sites now. We're not supposed to use the word site collection, but old habits die hard. And we can also even control it for individual OneDrive for Business sites. For example, if we want to say that, hey, marketing is allowed to share anonymously in their OneDrive for Business, but the R&D department, research and development, they cannot share externally at all. So we have a ton of different settings we can do. Now let me go here and let me go to the SharePoint Admin Center. I'll zoom in a bit, make sure that you all see. So where do we configure tenant level settings first? So first of all, on the left side in the navigation, under policies, we have sharing. First setting that you have at a tenant level is what audience can content in SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business be shared with? Anyone, new and existing guests, or only people in your organization? Again, this is for the whole tenant. If you set it at only people in your organization for the whole tenant, you turned off external sharing in SharePoint. Something that is funny is that from an admin point of view, sometimes I feel like we've been trained to think that if we turn off external sharing, we are more secure. But in the Microsoft Secure Score, in fact, if you turn off secure sharing, you're actually losing points, because the way that Microsoft sees this is that you turn it off in SharePoint, the business need to share content externally is still there. So what will departments do? HR will go get Dropbox, accounting will get Box, somebody else will go get Google Drive, and now you completely lost control. You're better to set it most permissive in your environment, shut it off for certain sites, but whatever you do, make sure that people stay in Microsoft 365, where you have all of your security and compliance settings. Also, really important, you see, I can set OneDrive to be more restrictive than SharePoint. However, SharePoint cannot be more restrictive. So I can have SharePoint at anyone and OneDrive at existing guests, but OneDrive can never be more permissive than SharePoint. Great, we'll leave it at anyone for now. Then I have some other external sharing settings I can do. First of all, really cool, I can allow external sharing with only specific domains. So this can be amazing if we have a workflow where, let's say before last week when I was working with Syskit as an external consultant before, we have a work relationship together. In my tenant, I would add Syskit as an allowed domain. So I kind of set at the tenant level, those are the companies that we're allowed to work with. I want to enable my users to invite people from those companies without opening a help desk ticket and boring our IT team, but they cannot invite anybody that's not on this list. If they want to work with a new company, there's an NDA that has to be signed. We have a different partner onboarding process. So this way, we kind of find a bit of balance between, we know that we're working with this company, we have an existing relation, we have an NDA, we will add their domain here, but we will not make it that users need to contact IT for every single external user they want to add. As long as it's in this domain, it's perfect. Then a setting that not enough people, not enough companies use, in my opinion. You can actually select what security groups can share with whom. Most companies now have some sort of training, phishing training, security training, things like that. So what I can do is I can actually say, you know what? Only people that passed security training level 1. So let's see here. What do I have? I think I have. Doesn't matter the group name, I'll use the HR bot testers, ImagineX security training level 1 completed group. They can share with authenticated guests only. People that are in the group creators group here, they pass security level training level 2, they can share with anybody. So I can also say, you know what, we're allowed to share anonymously at the tenant level, but only for people that did the required training. So we're able to add another level of requirements. And I use training as an example. I do a lot of training, so I find that training is important. It can also be that only full-time staff is allowed to share. Part-time staff is not allowed to share externally. Maybe only people from the HQ can share externally, not people from the field and things like that. So you can use security groups to decide who can share externally, who can share with authenticated groups. Talking about oversharing, I can also have guest access to a SharePoint site or OneDrive for Business site expire automatically after a number of days. This way, if I invite somebody to my SharePoint site, and after that, after 60 days, if I leave it configured like that, well, they will automatically be removed from the site. Of course, 15 days before, I will get a warning inside SharePoint. If I'm a site owner, I go to my SharePoint site, I have a warning up there. Hey, be careful, your guest is about to expire in 15 days, in 10 days, in 5 days. And I can choose to renew them for another 60 days, or I can say, you know what, it's good that SharePoint reminded me of it. Let's remove them right away. We're not working with this external person anymore. Awesome. I can then, this is one of the settings that you should always configure. What happens when people click on share and do not read? Because let's be honest here, users will always take the easiest path to get things done. They will select the document, they will click on share. They're not going to look at all of the settings. They're just going to click on share, copy a link, send the link to somebody. If somebody doesn't look at any of the settings, what do you want the settings to be? Now, of course, you can have that by default. If somebody doesn't read anything, the link is anonymous with edit permissions. But now you're kind of opening a loophole because the lazy users, they might not be ill-intentioned, but because they always want to take the easiest path to get things done, they're now creating anonymous links everywhere. What I like to do is to set it to specific people with view-only permissions. This way, if somebody wants to make a link edit, or if somebody wants to make a link anonymous or everybody in my organization, I want them to make the conscious choice. I want them to click the settings and say, I want this type of link. I don't want it by default. I want the user to make the choice of making that type of link. So I like to set it at the most restrictive by default, and then the user can make it more permissive. Great. Then we have expiration options for anonymous links. Do you want anonymous links to expire after a number of days? I don't see why not. I like to have an expiration, especially a low one, because most of the time when you need an anonymous link, you need it to send something that's not important to somebody. You want them to quickly download it or access it. So you want to make it easy, but I don't want that door open to my tenant forever. By the way, you can set it to longer at the specific site level. So maybe the marketing team comes to me and tells me, Vlad, we use anonymous links. All the content on our SharePoint site is brand guidelines, is stuff that's public anyway. Make anonymous links last for 1 year. I can make it last for 1 year on a specific site. But by default, I like to keep this pretty low. Of course, whatever works for your organization. Then I can decide, can I have anonymous links that give view and edit permissions or only view? Now, depending on your organization, right? What I like to do, but this is, in a way, I'm kind of giving you all the tools, doesn't apply to every organization. I'm telling you what I'm a fan of, but your organization might be different. I like to say that in my tenant, I will enable anonymous, but I want to make it view only. As soon as somebody needs to edit content, I want my users to have my external users to log in. This way I have auditing, I know who modified things, I know who deleted things, and I don't have it as a simple hey, anonymous user deleted the document or anonymous user deleted something. So I like to have it view only, but you can also have it to view and edit for files, view and edit, um, view, edit, and upload for folders. So those are the settings at the tenant level. Now, if I go to the site level, so if I go to the site level here, I will select this site here. Let's go on edit, and then I will go to settings. Let's go to more sharing settings so we see everything. Now, for most of the settings, uh, at the site level, they need to be more restrictive. So if I don't allow anonymous at the tenant level, I cannot select it at the site level, but I can say, you know what, for this site, even if at the tenant level I allow anonymous, only people in my organization here are allowed for this site. Let's put it at anyone, just so I can show you all the settings. I can also have limit sharing by domain at the site level. So again, imagine that you have 10 domains that you're allowed to at the tenant level, and then on each SharePoint site that you're working with somebody, you only allow that domain. I cannot add any new ones here. You see, I cannot add Syskit.com. It needs to be at the tenant level first, and then I can just select a subset of them if I want to in the site level. For some settings like expiration of guest access, I can set them higher for certain sites. Again, by default, it will be the same as organization level, but I can say for this site, if I invite somebody, it's longer term projects, we will set it to 120. I can also share the default link type to be more permissive or restrictive, and I can also have the expiration of anonymous links to be more permissive or restrictive at the site level. Of course, you can always just reset to organizational level settings if ever you just want to go back to what you have at the tenant level. Okay, so this is it for SharePoint. I know I'm going a bit fast just because I can talk 3 hours on it, but I want to give you an overview of everything that's available. Of course, we also have settings at the Entra ID level, which really important that you keep in sync. So just to show you a bit where I went in Entra ID Admin Center, I went to external identities, then external collaboration settings here, and you will see at the bottom, I can actually have an allow list and a block list for domains, and this will apply to Microsoft 365 groups and everything Entra ID, which in my heart, I still call it Azure AD, but you do have the option to set different settings here. You might want to allow more people access to Teams than SharePoint, but you need to make sure if you want it to work properly, that it matches. And it's two different settings. I wish it was only one setting for Teams, for groups, for SharePoint, but it's multiple settings that you need to keep in sync. Teams also have their own allow list and block list for domains, but only for external users, which in Teams lingo, it's federation. So not inviting people to the team, but simply chatting across domains. So this is the highlights of what I wanted to show you for external settings. And I'm looking at the time, I want to make sure I cover everything. So let's go a bit and talk now about internal as well. We covered some of the files for external, a bit of the Entra ID stuff. Now I want to talk about things that cover both internal and external. First thing I want to talk about are the SharePoint Premium Data Access Governance reports. Microsoft gives us access to 3 different reports that help us discover sharing links inside our tenant. Remember when I told you that when you create a sharing link that doesn't expire, you kind of give your keys to the house to somebody and you don't know when they're going to click that link and actually get permissions to it because they don't automatically get permissions. So we have reports to be able to find what are all the anyone links inside our organization, all the people in your organization links, and specific people links that are shared externally. This is part of the, currently today at the time of doing this webinar, it's called the Microsoft Syntax SharePoint Advanced Management license, but it will be part of SharePoint Premium soon. So now, if I go here still under Vlad at Global Mantics, if I go to the SharePoint Admin Center, if I go under reports here, I have data access governance. Now I have two different reports here. One of them is for sensitivity labels applied to files, not the topic of today's webinar. I want to focus on sharing links. Let's go under view reports here. Those are not real time, really important. So those you need to run them. It can take anywhere to a few minutes to a full day before the result is there. But you can click on it after it's done running, and then you can, for example, see, okay, for this site here, let me scroll down, getting started with Microsoft Power Automate, I have the URL. I know that I have 3 links created of type anyone in the last 30 days. I can see who's the primary admin, in conditional access and sensitivity labels. Do I have any sensitivity labels applied to this site? Do I give access with unmanaged devices or not? And is external sharing on or off for that site? So it doesn't give you that many details. You can always download the detailed report, which will give you more details on the links that you have inside your tenant. And the report will work up to 10,000 sites. So on the web page, you only see up to 100. In the Excel file, you see up to 10,000. Now, another really cool SharePoint Premium functionality I want to talk to you about is restricted access control. Now, what is restricted access control? One of the permission things that is a bit more special in Microsoft 365 is that for teams, for example, right? You cannot add somebody to a team without adding them to the Microsoft 365 group. But even with Microsoft 365 groups, I can share the SharePoint site without giving access to the full Microsoft 365 group. So I can add permissions only to SharePoint, and for standalone sites, the site owner can add both Entra ID groups and users directly. But we have a way to restrict that, and the behavior is different depending on if we want to do it on a group connected site or on a standalone site. So restricted access control on a group connected site will limit the SharePoint site permission to only the users part of the Microsoft 365 group. So site owners in SharePoint will not be able to share anything with members outside of the Microsoft 365 group. Now for standalone SharePoint sites, you can restrict site access to the members of a specified Entra ID security group, and this needs to be configured by an admin. And you can add up to 10 security groups at the site level. So how does it look like? First of all, again, you need to have SharePoint Premium or the Syntax Advanced Management license for this. But let me go here to, I'll go again to my another beautiful communication site. If I go to settings here, you see I have restricted site access enabled, which I have the beautiful Pro here. So it's telling me, hey, you need a license for this. So right now I have it that only people from the HR bot testers group can actually go and access this site. This is very useful, especially as we go with Copilot now. You should have this hopefully on all your high sensitivity sites. So now what I will do is I'll go to this site here. Let's go to site access. You see the HR bot testers, my security group, automatically gets added to the site. But hey, I'm a user, you know what? I want to give John Smith access to the site. John Smith is not supposed to have access here, but because I'm a site owner, I don't want to follow the process. I'm a bit lazy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna give John Smith permissions directly. So I only give John Smith read permissions. It will work anyway. You see, John Smith got added here. Even if John Smith is not part of the security group, I was still able to add John Smith. Now, I copied the link and let me go to my other browser here where I'm logged in as John Smith. If I go to the site now, you see I have an access denied. Even if John Smith had permissions to that site, my error is that your organization's policies prevent you from seeing the content on this site. So how can we use restricted access control? All your high sensitivity sites, your HR sites, finance sites, board meeting sites, you don't want people to make a mistake when they share content. So as an admin, you can say, you know what, from now on, we're going to manage the permissions of this SharePoint site by security groups decided in the SharePoint Admin Center. If you want to add somebody to this high sensitivity site, you need to go through IT. This way, nobody will ever make a mistake of adding people that they should not. So you do have this option. Great. Now, next setting. I still have about 8 minutes to go. So one or two more things to cover before we go and see how we can maybe do all of this a lot easier with an amazing third-party tool. But let's talk about access reviews. Access reviews are a tool inside Entra ID that allows you to proactively engage owners to verify permissions and remove permissions of users that do not need access to a resource anymore. Instead of going to the slides, let's just go and configure it in the demo here. Great, this is, now I double check that I'm on a good account. I had too many tenants open and everything. Now I'm a bit scared, but hopefully it won't play any more tricks on me. I will go to access reviews here. We'll set it up together. So I'll create a new access review, and then I'll say, what do I want to review? Teams and Microsoft 365 groups. What do I want to review? Is it all the Microsoft 365 groups that have guest owners inside, or select teams and groups? So do I only want to focus on that external sharing scenario we talked about, or external or internal? Then after that, what groups do you want to review? You can have different policies for different groups. For this demo, I will just select the Mark 8 project team. Who do I want to review again? Guest users only, or all users in this group? I want all users because I want internal and external. Really important that the licensing, and I feel like I didn't want to talk about licensing too much, but there is actually an add-on on top of Microsoft 365 E5 that gives you even more options, but I do not have it in this tenant. Now the question is, who do you want to review access to the group? Do you want it to be the group owners? Do you want to be the selected people? So you dedicate an admin that does the review. If you're mature enough, do you want people to review their own access and they decide themselves if they still need access to this group or not? Or the manager of the user, which at first it didn't really make sense to me, but this is amazing for field workers, part-time workers, and things like that. I like to set it to group owners. You can also decide if you want a multi-stage review or not. Let's only do a single stage review. How long do people have to do the review? I'll say here 3 days. How often does the review happen? Only one time, weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually? I feel like weekly is too much, but it might make sense for certain sensitive sites. I like to do it monthly or quarterly. So let's set it to monthly. Where do you want it to start? I want it to start right away, and I never want it to stop. Great. Now, if my group owner says that Vlad doesn't need access to this group anymore, do I want the system to automatically remove the user? Yes or no? What happens if the reviewers do not respond? If you set it to no change, I found that most people might not end up doing them because they realize whatever they do, it will not change much. So I like to do it to take recommendations. Microsoft will automatically recommend, depending if that user logged in recently or not, if they should still be in the group or not. So I like to set it to take recommendations. This way, if Microsoft recommends that you remove the user and the reviewer does nothing, you can still remove users. Great. Do you want to send maybe your compliance or security team a notification at the end of the review? Do you want to enable reviewer decision helpers such as the no sign-in within the last 30 days that I just mentioned? Do I want my reviewers to enter a justification, for example? Do I want to spam them with reminders? And do I want to add any additional content for the reviewer email? Then after that, the only thing I need to do is to give it a name. But now this can take a few minutes to actually get started, and I want to make sure we finish on time and we have time for questions. So what I will do is imagine we're in a Gordon Ramsay cooking show. We click on yes for the access reviews, and there we go. We let it cook for a couple hours, and right now it's out of the oven. We received the email. This is what you would receive as a reviewer. Please review access to the Mark8 project team group in Contoso. Vlad, I'm the group owner. Your organization requested that you approve or deny continue access to this team. Let's start the review. Now, as a group owner, I'll go here into access reviews, and then I'll see what are all the people that have access to this group. I can then select the people that, hey, you know what? Alex and Christy here, you see, my recommendation for Microsoft says deny them because they're inactive, but they were on sick leave, coming back next month. And you see, I have a justification that I need to enter. So here, my decision is approved by Vlad Catrinescu. And then for John Smith here, you know what? Deny. They do not work on this project anymore. Click on submit. So now, as a group owner, I have this additional responsibility of every time I get the email, I go review the membership of my group, and I make sure that, well, we do not overshare. Only people that should have access to the group will still have access to the group. So amazing tool, especially this is included in Microsoft 365 E5. So amazing tool if you have E5 to give more responsibility to your owners to make sure that they have that they take care of their groups every month, every quarter. How do you want to configure it? Okay, now two more things I want to talk about. I'll go talk about them really, really quick. One of them that not many admins know about is Microsoft Priva. Microsoft Priva, what is it? Microsoft Priva is a Microsoft privacy tool. And let's be honest, we'll all agree that with the current focus on privacy, sensitive information, things like that, that the importance that people put on it, you're going to end up in the news if people steal sensitive information from you. If somebody steals your intranet content about the picnic next month, and it's still not good, but it's not as bad as having a privacy leak. Microsoft Priva, and it's a separate license, it's a separate tool. What it allows you to do is it allows you to limit data overexposure or oversharing by creating alerts if personal data is accessible to too many people. So, hey, you know what? This document that you last created has sensitive information inside. It can be credit card numbers, it can be social security numbers, it can be bank account numbers, passport details. Go in and decide, is it normal that that many people have access to it, or do you want to make it private? And it allows you to directly engage the content owners. This way you can automate the process and take some load off the IT team, and you can even add some training in there, which is pretty awesome. The last thing I want to talk about is Microsoft Graph Data Connect. Now, this is a brand new, well, I wouldn't say a brand new tool. It's been out for a couple months, but I feel like with the way that things are advancing a couple months now, it still feels like brand new. And honestly, it's a tool service feature. I'm not sure how to describe it, that I haven't played a lot with. It's something that I want to deep dive deeper in personally as well. But what it allows you to do, it allows you to take a snapshot of all of the data in your tenant, a point in time snapshot, and then you can run Power BI reports on the data. So it allows you to, for example, one of the default built-in reports is oversharing reports. So a lot of the things we saw in the data access governance reports that Microsoft built, you can have access to the raw data behind it, and then you're able to create your own reports. There is a cost behind, depending on how much data you have, how many times you're exporting it, and everything. So it's not free. There is a cost, but it's an amazing tool. Okay, Patrick, I think I finished on time. I did my best. I know I still went above 2 minutes, but I covered everything I wanted to do. Everybody, please put your questions in the chat. But while you do, I think Philip will show us some amazing ways that, well, Syskit can help.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vlad. It was an awesome presentation. So yeah, we'll give you some time to catch up and drink some water. Yeah, it's following Vlad's recommendation. Yeah, don't miss out your chance to get, direct consultancy now with your questions to Vlad. We will get to them really soon. We have already one question. So please, yeah, use the Q&A session, the Q&A function on your screen to send your questions. But yeah, before that, we're going to now go to Philip from Syskit. He will do a quick demo on how Syskit Point can help you gain visibility over your Microsoft 365 environment and enforce governance processes. Philip, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Just a quick test to see if you can hear me.
Yeah, all great.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Vlad, for the amazing presentation. You're going to be a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best to try to keep up. Vlad gave us a great overview of why oversharing is important. What I'm going to do is take a couple of minutes to show you how you can actually prevent oversharing using Syskit Point. If you're not familiar with it, Point is an end-to-end solution that helps you easily manage your M365 environment. It allows you complete visibility over your entire tenant, including your workspaces, users, and file structures. You can easily govern what is happening by creating automated policies and rules, which means less manual and repetitive work for you. So in line with Vlad's presentation, I would like to show you a couple of features you can use to keep oversharing in your tenant under control. So let me switch over to Point, and let's open up the report center. As you can see, Point offers a lot of reports, but right now we'll focus on just the most important ones. Starting with sharing links, which Vlad also talked about in his presentation. This report shows you real-time information about all links used to share company data and all users who have access to those links. This report is highly scalable and shows links regardless of when they were created. For the purposes of this demo, let's find the Q18. And as you can see, Point allows you to choose what types of sharing links you can analyze. And we all know links shared with everybody, including people outside of the company, present a major security risk. But a much more common issue is sensitive content shared with the entire company, and sadly, this issue is often overlooked. Like Vlad said, it's like giving your house keys to everybody in the company, which is definitely not a good practice. So if we run this report, Point allows you to easily view all types of sharing links and take immediate action to prevent oversharing with one simple click. Another useful report is group access. Here you can see access for each group, including how many members it has. This allows you to easily identify groups that are available to many users, and once again, take action to see whether all of those users need to have access to that group. But not all groups are the same, and some of them are more dangerous than others. So let's find the most dangerous ones that share content with everybody. And if we run the report, we can once again see all groups that are shared with everyone. We can take this a step further and filter by sensitivity label to show only confidential workspaces. And just like before, we can prevent oversharing by removing access with one simple action. Reports are great if you're looking for something specific, but nobody wants to manually analyze reports all the time, right? You need to stay ahead of the curve and be proactive. That's why Point automatically detects vulnerabilities in your environment and displays them in a centralized place. So let's head over to the security and compliance dashboard to see how this looks. Here you can see a list of all detected vulnerabilities where you can immediately resolve them. In regards to oversharing, you can see workspaces with too many members. Here you can see people who have access to a particular workspace and how many members that workspace has, so you can review whether all of those users still need to have access to that workspace. Another thing we can check out is workspaces with shadow users. Shadow users are people who have access to the content of a workspace but are not members of it. Here you can see a list of workspaces with shadow users, when they were detected, and also how many of them they are. If you go into the details of a particular workspace, you can see a list of all members. You can remove access for individual users, for groups, or you can just select multiple users or select all of them and just, once again, with one simple action, remove access and prevent oversharing. And we've seen how you can analyze specific problems with reports. And we've also seen how Point automatically tracks vulnerabilities and notifies you of them. This is already a really powerful combination, but there is a way to make things even more proactive, and that's by including owners, like Vlad also talked about in his presentation. So Point also allows you to set up access reviews, and it works like this, similar to how Vlad showed it. Admins set up policies to keep your tenants compliant, and you can have multiple policies for multiple workspaces. You can schedule access reviews, which deliver tasks to owners, asking them to maintain their workspaces in line with the policies that the admin define. From the owner's perspective, it looks like this. They receive an email asking them to perform an access review. They open the link in the email, and that leads them to a screen similar to this one, where they can view all of the information about their workspace in several steps. They can see the basic information, they can review members, different types of members, they can review sharing structure and sharing links, and they can choose whether they want to add or remove access as needed. Access reviews are performed regularly, making sure that your tenant always stays compliant. And this continuous cleanup helps you prevent problems before they even happen. Now, what I showed, these are just a few basic features that Point has to offer. The best way to experience them yourself is to sign up for a 21-day free trial and connect your tenant and see how everything looks with your own information. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, either for Vlad or for myself, now we would gladly answer them.
Thank you, Philip, for the excellent demo. Yeah, so now it's time for the Q&A session with Vlad and Philip. We have actually a couple of questions ready, so yeah, keep going and keep sending us any questions you may have. So yeah, Vlad, are you ready to answer some questions?
Hopefully I am. Let's see.
All right, so first question is from Nacho. So he asked, site permissions level shared to a specific domain can be different as tenant level domains configured?
Okay, so I think I understand the question. So for SharePoint Online, you have a list of 10 domains, let's say, company1234510.com at the tenant level. At the site level, it can be a subset of them. So if I have a site that I only work with company one with, it can be a subset of the tenant level sites at the site level, but I cannot have a domain at the site level which has not been allowed at the tenant level. So site level, subset of domains.
Okay, thank you, Vlad. Thanks for the question again, Nacho. All right, the next question is from Juliet. So thanks for the question. I believe we did answer after with the access review demo by Syskit. But yeah, let me read the question. In my company, SharePoint site owners are used to reviewing the membership regularly, but we are facing issues to follow up on single folders or files shared by link to specific users in the company. Is there a way for owners to see all content shared with non-members, or for administrators to get such detailed reports?
Yeah, we kind of covered it, I think, with both out of the box what you can do, which is a bit more limited, and with Syskit. One of the things with access reviews that is a bit tougher out of the box is that you cannot have it for a standalone SharePoint site. So with access reviews in Microsoft 365, it needs to be a Microsoft 365 group, which doesn't cover if you have a communication site or a standalone team site. That's a major limitation in out of the box that Microsoft doesn't currently have now. You cannot have an access review only on a SharePoint site.
Perfect. Thank you, Vlad. All right. So yeah, another question came in interested into the 21 demos, free demos. So free to visit our website. There is the try for free as well. We shared on the chat. And yeah, a question I believe for you, Philip, from Paul. Hi, thanks, Paul, for the question. You mentioned owners. Does Point work with members of the owners group or someone with FC, or do they have to be SCCA? If you want me to repeat, does Point work with members of the owners group or someone with FC, or do they have to be SCA?
I am not sure, but we can definitely check and get back to you after the webinar. We have your contact information, so we can email you the answer.
For everybody else on the webinar that doesn't know the acronyms, it's the primary site collection admin. I feel like we're using so many acronyms nowadays that sometimes they're like, what are people asking questions about? So for everybody else, if you see SCA somewhere, it's site collection admin is the one primary owner, not the site owners group. That's the big question.
Yeah, we can get back to you, Paul, to get that confirmation. So yeah, once again, thanks for the question. So we covered the questions that came in. Let's give me maybe a minute or so to see if there are any others with questions.
I'm really happy we finished on time. I've even been warned before the webinar that, Vlad, we know you get too excited, you talk too much. We're going to try to finish this one on time. So I'm happy. I see 11:59 my time. We even have 1 minute to spare. But until some questions come in, don't hesitate to try out the Syskit trial. I did it on my own tenant last week, as I've been 1 week at Syskit now. I did it. It's super easy. Takes like 5 minutes to do that trial setup. And you'll discover, even in a trial, lots of cool things about the tenant. So it will only take you like 5 minutes. I did it myself this week. So definitely try it out. It doesn't cost anything.
All right, I believe that there are no additional questions. So yeah, I think we are ready to close this webinar. So I would like to, once again, thank you all for joining us on today's webinar. As mentioned, everyone who registered for this event will receive a recording of the webinar. Again, thanks to Vlad for today's presentation. Anything additional that you would like to say before we wrap things up?
No, thank you all for having me. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for taking an hour out of your day to listen to me talk to something I'm passionate about. And I really hope you learned something new. And that's it. Be careful, don't overshare, and remember, AI is a great amplifier. If your permissions are bad, AI will just amplify that and make it worse. So make sure you get your environment ready before you spend thousands of dollars on AI solutions. It's important you get that environment ready.
Perfect. All right. If you have any further questions regarding Syskit Point comes up or any of our products, please reach out to us at sales@syskit.com. It was a pleasure having you all here, and see you next time.